I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect this much dissent, and I'm going to take this to my grave. I never thought I'd be portrayed on microphone like this before in my life.
Welcome to the INYOPools podcast, your go-to source for everything pool equipment. Whether you're a seasoned pool professional, a DIY pool owner, or just diving into the world of pool maintenance, we've got you covered. In today's episode, we talk about the three types of pool filters: sand, cartridge, and diatomaceous earth. Take it away, boys.
All right, welcome to another INYOPools podcast. Today we're going to be talking about pool filters, the different types, the pros and cons, the maintenance of them, and our recommendations. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump into it. Sand filters, how do they work?
Sand filters acts the same ways you would see like water supplies. The water filters down through the sand. It doesn't get a lot of particles, but it gets some. It's probably the bottom level of one. And that's all it does. The water just goes through the tank. It goes down through the sand like you would bedrock, people's water tables like in New York. And then it would go through what they call laterals and then right back up into your pool.
Mm-hmm. And so sand filters, like you said, they don't filter out as small particles as some of the other filters, but we'll get to that. So what are the pros of sand filters?
Cost.
I'd say the fact that you can backwash it, or you can let water out, large amounts of water out over an hour's time if you're trying to drain or drain your pool.
Yeah, maintenance and cost are the big pros to those.
Yeah, and you don't have to mess with them that often. The average for what the sand is 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
It'd be longer if you're not using it around.
And that depends on how you maintain your pool. If you maintain your pool and you don't have to worry about algae and this and that, then you can extend it to at least 7. But even if 7, I would still do it because the longer it stays in there, it starts to turn almost like concrete.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any more pros? Sand filters?
Sand filters are, like, besides the price, you could actually, there are products now that you could, like, sparkle up, that you could add to the sand filter to actually increase the filtering of it.
Okay. So that's like the sand alternative?
Yep. No, it's actually just an additive.
It's an additive, okay.
And it's almost like a powder, but it gets into the sand and it increases the filtering.
So if you think about it, your sand particles, whenever you first put sand in there, they don't walk into each other as much, and then that's why you don't change the sand out often, because as that sand breaks down, those the sand settles and locks into each other. Well, the product he's talking about, I've never used it, but I can only assume that it gets into those gaps and it helps filtrate a little bit better.
Yeah, it's an enhancer that you get, and you usually only see it in sand filters to help with that, because, like I say, most people don't want the other ones, which we'll get into. They want to go to a cheaper alternative, and one that doesn't require, like, say, maintenance, where you backwash, boom, boom, you don't have to add anything. And they like to have that extra filtering power, so they have additive you can put in there to help.
All right. And what about cons of sand filters?
The filtering, they don't filter down as much as the other types, which we'll get into. It only filters down to about 20 to 40 microns, and a micron is roughly 1/1,000,000th or 0.00004th of an inch.
Mm.
I would say con to kind of maintenance again. I mean, maintenance is a pro, but also maintenance is a con, because whenever you go to change that sand, it is a pain in the butt. Or whenever you have something broken, like a lateral or something, you have to take all that sand out. So, and then where do you put that old sand?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say that's a con as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, because those things are just, even when they're not wet, you're looking at, depends on your size, anywhere from 150 to 400 pounds of salt or sand. And then if you got a top mount, you got to be able to lift that thing up to where, get it on its base, and then clamp it into your multiport.
Yeah, and then I guess the other con is, backwashing is easy, but you're also losing water.
Yeah.
You're losing a few inches of water each time you backwash, and you got to put that water.
Yeah, I agree.
Dump that water somewhere.
Yep.
So if, you're on water restriction, might not be the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. If you're not meaning to get rid of that water, then you're definitely going to lose some water whenever you backwash it.
And then I guess sand filters are bigger too.
Yep.
So if you're in a tight space, probably not ideal.
Yeah, definitely. If you're in a tight space, have walls that you're trying to, or a pad that you're trying to put it on, you got to really account for that type of stuff.
Yep. And then if you get an algae bloomer, you got a really green pool, a little more difficult to clean it up with a sand filter. Again, it goes back to those filtering the microns.
Yep.
It just doesn't catch the real fine stuff, so it takes longer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you might have to use like a drop down type product.
That's when you would definitely have to use like an enhancer and a filter enhancement. And like I say, there's multiple different kinds. I just know of Sparkle Up, but you would use something like that to help your sand filter along.
There's a bunch of different types of clarifiers out there that help coagulate the dead algae and catch it in that filter. So
I know there's sand alternatives like Zeobest or whatever to help filter down to a smaller micron. But I've also heard negative things and heard from customers and service guys about
like
that.
quartz kinds, like the different kinds, like they're like little beads. They look like little quartz beads. And I'm still on the fence on that. I've heard, like I say, I've heard good things, but then I also heard people go back, say they went back to sand because it seemed like it did a better job.
Yeah, and it didn't seem to last as long. People are having to replace it after a year or two.
I don't have any experience with those products, but I've just actually started, whenever I started working here, I just started hearing about them. But I'd like to hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
The plus about Best, Zeolite, I have no idea why they're all called Zeo. I probably should look into that. But the good thing about it is you only need like a half of what you would need for sand. So if you have a 400-pound sand filter, or as I like to call it, one mat. If you have a 400-pound sand filter, you only need about 200 pounds worth of zeolite. The downside of that is that, you need less of it, but it's also a hefty chunk of change, just because it is more expensive than,
Then we get
a bunch, like 40, like number 20 silica sand. I don't know how much you sell it for, but I'm sure it's dirt cheap. It's literally dirt.
Because it comes like 50-pound bags from Quick Right. Usually retail anywhere from $9.99 to, depends on, $15.99. So,
And so what about any recommended models? What's your go-to for a sand filter?
I would say Hayward or Pentair. I've seen, those are the two that come to mind that I see in most people's backyards.
Yeah, I think Pentair is probably the most common sand filter. Hayward, not so much. Hayward's more on the, they sell more of like the cartridge and DE. More cartridge than DE, because the Star Clear is like, I would say, like their flagship filter, because like everybody, I've always seen it come to our store. If they come in with a cartridge, they have a cartridge filter. Let me guess, is it C1200? They're like, well, yeah.
If it was like an above ground pool, I'd probably say the SD60 or the SD40, like the sand dollar models.
Yep.
By Pentair.
By Pentair. I've had to deal with a bunch of different sand filters. I don't know what the real upside when it comes to if it's a side mount or a top mount. I just know top mount, take up less space. They can sometimes be easier to handle.
Yep.
Especially if you're trying to get in through the top. But also side mount filters, they usually have a lot more duct work inside, because they have a elbow that goes down into the lateral, then you have an elbow that goes up, it goes into a diffuser. So there's a lot more moving parts. So, if I was going to say, if someone's asking me what model you're going to get, I'd go with a top mount for me.
So changing the sand on a top mount is more difficult than changing sand on a side mount.
Right, because you got to remove the plumbing.
Yeah, because with side mount, you just undo the two bulkhead units, and you can just roll it over and just undo the top, and then you could put it back, hook it up, and then put the water in, and always put your water in first.
I'd say on
an
installation standpoint too. I mean, whenever you get the top mounts, you have to have that thing. And once you start putting that sand in there, you have to have it proper, or if it's cockeyed and you put it just doesn't work.
Not to mention, with the bigger the sand filter you get, if you have a top mount, you're like this sometimes trying to move that, and you're trying to look to make sure you got it. Whereas side mount's always easier because it's right there.
I've definitely been there with the water hose trying to move sand around so I can readjust the feed pipe going into it. So, all right, I'd say side mount. Side mount is where I'd be at with if
Plus,
I were
it's
to go
easier to
for-
work on if you have to change the spider gaskets or any kind of gaskets on the multi-port. It's easier to deal with side mount than it is top mount stuff.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect this much dissent, and I'm going to take this to my grave. I never thought I'd be portrayed on microphone like this before in my life. Honestly, I am appalled.
When you're out in the field, you really appreciate the side mounted first stuff, especially when they're like, hey, I need to change this. You need to go out and change stand. You're like, oh, I got to undo that clamp, and then I got to make sure that it doesn't bring down the pipe. And so you're like, oh, don't break.
So I have a question. Is there a model of sand filter that let's say you rock up to a place and you turn the corner and see, dang, it's an S200 Hayward, because it's got like 50 bolts that you have to undo or something like that, or it's just something that's very particular or has we'll get to D filters at some point, but Perflex, like, oh, I'm getting D in the pool. Oh, great. Now I have to check 120 little tubes. That's
Little
fantastic.
fingers.
Well, but like, is there like a sand filter that you would see like, man, I'm just going to say replace it.
In all honesty, whenever I'd walk into a backyard for a sand filter job, I wasn't walking in there to replace sand or to install a new sand filter. I was talking them out of it. Typically, I was cutting a hole in it, dumping all the sand, and putting in a cartridge filter or DE filter because I had talked the customer into buying something else.
Yeah, but they're really animated. Most of the people that I've seen that had sand filters that had no problem with it are screened-in pools, because there's not a lot of stuff getting in them, so they don't have to worry about a lot of the stuff. But when they're out in the elements, it's like, well, when it comes time to replace this, I would suggest you either go with a cartridge or DE.
All right. Well, let's transition over to cartridge filters. How do those work?
So same, water comes in and it pushes through the filter, the paper filter, and pushes back into the pool. And that's what that does the filtering, is the paper cartridge inside of it.
Yeah. All right. So pretty simple as well.
Yeah,
What
pretty
are
simple.
some of the pros of a cartridge filter?
I say
Size.
What's that?
Yeah, size. Yeah, I mean, you got a single cartridge there. It's taking up minimal space. There's no valve that you really have to deal with. It's just one in, one out, especially with the new like RP models that you would see with a Clean and Clear or was it Star Clear or whatever. Like they have the end pipe at the top, so you don't have to do a weird S shape like pipe coming out of the outport of a pool pump to go down into the import of the old valve of the old cartridge filters.
So you don't have to get creative. Whenever you're installing them,
It
yes.
doesn't look like a Willy Wonka like chocolate pipe type thing, so you can just kind of nice and simple. Also, the fact that it's just, you know,
maintenance.
it's maintenance wise. You just pop the lid off. It's not always that easy, but you pop the lid off, hose it down, and you're good.
Yeah, that's the best thing. Is the cartridge filter is probably your best all around.
Yeah.
It's not the greatest as far as filtration, but it's not the worst. It's like the perfect one, because most people it's easy to take top off maintenance wise. You hose it, and then that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, in cost again, it's like kind of the middle thing.
Yeah.
It is the, that's the middle child you want. It's
That's probably the con, is the cost, because you're going to be,
long term wise.
Yeah.
You have to replace that cartridge. If you're gonna have that thing, you're gonna have to replace the cartridge like 4 or 5 times maybe. Unless you get like a 4 cartridge system, then you probably can go a little bit longer, especially in between.
Well, the quads, but
I didn't like the quads at first, but now I like the quads because the maintenance behind them, you can kind of, if you wait to clean your filter, depending on your situation too, but if you wait to clean your regular single cartridge filter once a month, if you think about it, you got 4 filters in there and you can do it quarterly. That's how we did them on our routes, was quarterly.
Plus, as far as cartridge filters go, when you have a green to clean pool, cartridge is usually one of the worst, because you're cleaning a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a quad, you could cut back on that time where you're not cleaning it like seems like 3 or 4 times a day until your pool's cleared up. You can go a couple days and then clean all 4, and then bam, and you'll start to see it clear up a lot quicker.
And so, we had mentioned the sand filters filter down to about 20 to 40 microns. The cartridge filters 10 to 15
Yep, 10 to 15.
microns. So it's better filtration over the sand filter. And as we mentioned, cleaning it, you don't have to backwash, so you're not wasting water other than the hose water that you have to use to hose it down, but still it's minimal compared to backwashing a sand
And
filter.
You really got to have, and with a cartridge filter, you got to have real good pressure out on if you're just using your faucet out. And I've been to houses where there's like no pressure and it's like a pain trying to close it off. It's like I can't really get in there and do a good clean job because the water's not coming out that good.
I also like the fact that you can, I wouldn't say extend the life, but zhuzh it up when you do like an acid bath for a cartridge thing. So, even if you get to a point where this thing is old, you can, and you I could probably do replace it.
Yeah.
You can get,
It can open the fibers up. And when you do a little acid or there's other more non-abrasive than acid.
vinegar, little white distilled vinegar.
There's others, cell cleaners that won't.
Oh, they have
Cleaners that won't.
They have filter cleaners that you can purchase that are pre-made, or a tablet that you drop in a bucket, and I can't say what chemical content it has in it, but they do have them out there, and they do tend to work. They'll prolong the life for a few months if you're waiting on buying.
And they're non-abrasive. That's the main thing, is you don't want to destroy the fibers.
Yeah, because using something like acid sometimes can burn oils into the actual filter, and it may get you a month or 2, but it's going to destroy that filter in the long run.
And you also got to pay attention to your cartridge too. Most people, when you buy a cartridge, you're going to have bands around them, and the rule of thumb is when 2/3 of the band. So if you got 5 bands on the big one, as soon as 3 of those bands break, you need to get a new one. It's like a tread wear indicator on a car. That's what they're designed to let you know it's time to get a new one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've mentioned some of the cons. You have, it takes longer to clean up a green pool. So, it takes longer because it does do a good job at filtering out, but it's a little more involved.
You have to babysit it.
You have to babysit it. You have to clean it several times a day. So that would be a con. Fills up quicker. And then replacement cartridges cost money.
Yeah, long-term costs. You have to realize that you might get 3 or 4 seasons out of a cartridge, maybe more, but that's still going to be, another $50, $70, $90, and that's for a single cartridge in the future. Especially if it's a 4 cartridge system, you just multiply that cost by 4. I mean, you should get a lot more life out of those things, but you do have to remember.
You're getting average a year. Every year, you should really look at your cartridge, evaluate whether.
Yeah, I think here in Florida, we're taught that we have to change it out once every year to a year and a half, where in other states where you're only running your pool for
if you're
6 months, 5 months out of the year, you're gonna get a longer lifespan out of that cartridge because you're not running the pool. So I know in my head I'm programmed once every year to year and a half replace them, but other places not as often.
Yep. Another con, I personally have a cartridge filter in my pool, is if I have to drain water out and go through that, it's much quicker if you have a sand filter or a DE filter, and you can.
That's why we always when we install, like if someone's going from like a sand filter or a DE for some reason, they say, hey, I want to go with a cartridge because it's a little cheaper than replacing one. We always say you might want to put in like a 3-way valve between the filter and the pump, that way you can put a backwash hose on that, and makes it a whole lot. And because sometimes they try to sell you like those little spigots that you screw on the bottom, and you put a garden hose on it. It's like pack a lunch, buddy. You go,
and then you forget it and you drain half your pool and you're like, oh man.
Or you forget it, you're like, I'm going to my next pool, and then did I leave?
Yeah. Pool guys don't do that. Yep.
It's never happened ever.
All right, what about some recommended models of cartridge filters?
I want to say the one that I like as far as the cartridge filters go, because they were the first ones to do it, is the Jandy C series, CS series.
Oh, I already see Tyler's displeasure at that.
The Jandy CS series.
This guy with the Jandy.
The Jandy CS. The Jandy CS
on the
series
side here.
was the first ones that started doing. Whereas like Hayward would have in and out on the bottom. Jandy was the first one to put the end pipe coming in, so you get more of the cartridge at the midway point.
I do agree with you on that as far as the top to bottom, because it just makes sense. Why would we go bottom to bottom?
Because you'll pull your cartridge out. People pull their cartridge out. Why is it only dirty on the bottom?
So the one thing I do not like about the Jandies is the lids. For the longest time, the way the ring is attached to the lid, we would have trouble with the O-ring rolling, and my pool guys wouldn't want to lube the O-ring because that O-ring was a pain in the butt to get on and off. And if you think about it with the lid, and I talked to a sales rep from Jandy on how to actually do it. If you tighten it down and then push on the top and then tighten it down, that works for me to get it on, and that's the reason why I kind of don't like that model, just because in my beginning days, I had such a hard time getting those lids on and off, and I'd sit there at a pool that was supposed to take me 15, 20 minutes. I'd be there for 45 minutes trying to get a lid on. That's kind of why I don't like those ones.
Yeah, but I like
The concept is cool.
I like because because it's got the side, whereas like the old Haywards, which the Star Clear is a good one. The problem is the rod that goes down the middle is pre-molded. So once that rod comes up, it's done. You can't get a new rod and replace it.
With the Hayward Star Clears, yes, they have that. They all have flaws. The knob gets seized onto the rod comes out. I think with the rod, because I've been able to take the rods out, and if you Loctite it one time, you can do up to one time Loctite in there, and after that, it's done for. You have to buy a new filter. Then you have your Clean and Clears, Pentair, and they have their own flaw too, where you take that ring off, and you can't just pull the lid off. You're sitting there. Yeah. I see brake marks on the little fins because people are taking hammers or rubber mallets and trying to knock them off.
That's why people come to my store and they're like, what's the trick to those ones with the side? It's like, the trick is undo the ring all the way, lift it off, put it back down, and do a half a turn where you can't lift it up. Turn it on real quick. You're going to hear it pop. Turn off your equipment and just hold up the lid, let the water drive out.
I've seen those rings split in half from sun damage, where they're like, oh, I came home and my pool is drained pretty much, and the ring is just broken. And I was like, oh, there's your problem.
Oh yeah, all the filters are gonna have that problem because of
I think they all have flaws.
They all do,
and it's kind of pick your poison with between Hayward, Pentair, and Jandy.
Yeah, I've noticed that most customers, it doesn't matter. They have their, like, I only do Hayward, I only do Pentair, I only do, Jandy, and vice, which is fine. I mean, I always tell people, it's your pool, and if you've had this model and it's been working great for you, then go with it. They all, like I said, they all have their problems. I do like the side thing. Like I say, you get used to it when you're doing them, and once I show people how to do it, they're like, okay, that makes sense. But
the concept is great with like Pentair, because you're actually pushing down the lid and getting it secured and then putting the ring on, where even like the newer Hayward, I forgot what the name was, that has the ring. It has these little nubs at the top that keep the ring on the lid itself. And if if you're sitting there tightening it down, a lot of time those rings, whenever you have it off, they're cockeyed and they're hard to adjust. So it deters people from actually taking that O-ring off and lubing it up, which anytime your lid's not coming off properly, you probably need to lube your O-ring up to get it back on there. But people don't think about it as much that way, where on the Clean and Clears, the O-ring's plainly on the filter base, and you could just take a dab of lube and put some lube on there, slide it down.
The only problem about the Clean and Clear is getting the cartridge out, because I do hate the fact that the middle is a 2-part core, and then you see people like trying to, how do I get it out? And it's like, well, you're gonna have to push down to get some air. If you can push it down to where you see the holes start to show, all of a sudden you'll be able to twist it, and then you just twist it.
I always took my 3 fingers, but I also did.
Well, the rest of us had 5 on each hand.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens. He's from Florida. That's how they grow up down here.
Gators, man.
All right, so let's switch over to the third of our filter types, the DE filter. How do those filters work?
DE filters, I tell people when you buy a DE filter, the powder is what really does the filtering. If you buy a DE filter, it's going to have 8 grids, 7 full, 1 partial, and the inside. And when you add the right amount of powder, anywhere how many pounds it tells you to add, each filter different, that is actually the filtering element. It actually collects to the grids, the water passes through that, and then goes to the manifold and back into your pool. If you don't put the powder in there, which I've actually seen people do that, and like, why is my pressure off the chart? It's like, well, did you clean it? Yeah, I backwash it. Did you recharge it? What does that mean? Is that you put fresh DE powder in it? No? Well, then your grids are dirty. You're going to have to take it apart, hose off whatever contaminants that are in your pool that has coated the grids, and then close it back up and recharge it with DE powder.
Yeah, the grids are just the holder of the powder. Or grids, the fingers, whatever you're using, the hybrid versions, all that's doing is holding powder, and the powder's doing the filtration.
So the major pro of the DE filter is its ability to filter out the smallest micron of all the filter types. So you're looking at, 2 to 5 microns for a DE filter to get down to?
5. I always tell people the best way you could tell how well your filter is filtering is at night, turn on your pool light. When you turn on your pool light and you can see, your pool can look crystal clear during the day, but at night when you turn on that pool light and you start to see when the light, like you would, like with smoke, that is like all that. That's all that microns that hasn't been filtered out. And when you do it with a DE, it's pretty much crystal clear.
I was going to say the same thing. I was going to use the light.
Yeah, that's the best. That's the best thing I tell people. It's like how to just turn on your pool light at night and you'll see. And then if it looks, you see a bunch of stuff, you're like, okay, I have a cartridge, but I need to get a new cartridge because it's not. So, and same with DE. If you see something in your pool when you turn that pool light, then you definitely need to clean,
backwash or do whatever you do.
Sidetrack on that. When let's say you're in a room and like the sun's coming through a window and you can see all that dust particle. Yep. Like, you ever seen something like that and then someone sneezes, like, oh my God. It's like if your pool looks like that, then all right, let me get some flocculent because something's not right.
Because a micron is actually smaller than smoke, red blood cells, white blood cells, and just for reference here, a human hair diameter is 7 to 8 microns.
All right.
He's fun at parties. He nails it. He talks about microns.
Well, I want people to be informed. I always tell people, and that's the thing about the pool is like when you're out shopping for something, you really be informed. You really need to do your homework. Yeah. If someone says, "Oh, just put this," I think you should also take the time to see what it is you're doing, and because if you don't, then later you'll be like, "Why isn't it?" It's like, well, you should have known what the pros and cons were.
I just totally hit my chair.
So another pro would be that it's quicker to clean up a pool if for some reason it is green or super cloudy, because again it's filtering down to a smaller micron, so it's going to be quicker. And then maintenance, it's easy to turn a valve and backwash it if your DE filter has a.
So maintenance is both a pro and a con.
Right. I think. Oh yeah, we'll get to that.
I think all three of them have pros and cons on the maintenance side, but also. Another thing, same as the sand filter, if you're trying to drain water, it's faster through the backwash line.
The DE filter, as far as maintenance, is probably the one that needs the most maintenance out of all three of them. Is the DE filter.
When it's working, and whenever it's not, it's not. So there's no in between.
No, it's like anything you buy, especially that once you put the DE in there, it's not all right, I have to do nothing. It takes a lot. You have to watch the pressure gauge to see when you're going to have to change, backwash. And then once a year, you have to take it apart. And that's where the real fun begins.
All right. So let's switch over to cons. Sounds like there's some cons in using a DE filter.
So whenever they break, they're really messy. They shoot a bunch of DE powder into your pool. You're not only having to fix the issue at hand, but you're also having to clean all the DE powder out of the bottom of your pool.
And usually when you do your annual, that's one thing you always want to look, because the DE powder is so fine that when you're inspecting the grids, and that's when you do the diameter, you should take it completely apart, break apart the manifold, take everything off the bottom, hold it, and then inspect after you hose off, because it just takes the tiniest little slit and it'll just come right back in your pool.
And then, my beef with the DE filter has always been just using the DE powder.
And that's the thing, cost.
Cartridge in it.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't want to, that stuff, you go pour it in it up in the face. And you're like, oh.
It is a carcinogen. It is a carcinogen. And
Isn't California? Are you allowed to use DE in California anymore? I'd have to look into it again.
You are, but like the pool guys, and even we're taught, we don't do it, but when we're taught, you're supposed to wear a respirator when you're doing. But as pool guys, we kind of shuck that. Yeah. What we do is we just make sure which way is the wind blowing. Okay, it's going that way. So the wind's in my back. Okay, then I can do it.
Yeah, there's other alternatives to it too. I mean, they have this one. I think it's crushed up wood pulp. It's like a filter fiber. And it sucks. I hate that stuff.
Yeah, and there's this stuff made by, and I hate, I don't want to say the name, but it's literally called DE fiber, fiber thing. And it comes in, and it takes one small little tiny bag is like equivalent to, what you would need, like
6 pounds or 4 pounds that you need.
Problem with that though is when you read it, you're like, oh, this thing sounds perfect. But anybody who's ever had to open one up and clean it, that stuff is a nightmare.
It's everywhere. It doesn't last as long. So between it backwashings, you don't get as long.
Yeah. As far as cost goes, it's more expensive. It's like adding the Xeon, the glass bead stuff to the sand. It's people just like also go with the sand. Same with that. They just use DE powder.
Another con is whenever you go to fix it, it's not cheap. I mean, your grids, $150 for a set of grids on average, and then if your manifold's broken, that's another $100. You start adding all
the
these.
relief. If the relief valve goes out on the top of the man, there's so many. That's when people say, "Oh, I think I'm getting DE back in my pool. My grid's bad." I'm like, "Well, that could be it. It could be as simple as the stem pipe O-ring. When you put it on, that could be broke." Because it just takes a little slit in it for the EDM. Could be your manifold. It could be that relief on the top. Or
there's a bunch of variables.
Could be a sucking air leak that's making you lose prime and back flushing to the pool pump.
And the thing that drives your pool DEI guys or DIY guys is taking it apart and putting it back together. Which is why I like Waterway, the Waterway DE. Because the way they designed it is that when you're putting it together on the bottom, it actually has the marks so that when you line it up, you can see, okay, the bottom of the D grid should be here. So it makes it a lot easier.
So I was taught, or whenever I first was taught how to put new grids together on a manifold, I always did it from the manifold grids. And then, but actually on the Pentair, if you do it from the base grids manifold, they have a little black piece that hooks onto the grids and holds them together so that you can stick and on the actual base, it tells you small grid here, and then it has the hole. And I didn't know that for the longest time. So I always fought with manifold 2 grids to base. And then once I started doing that, I was like, okay, this is a lot easier.
Yeah, that's the way we always did it, was the manifold, which was really a pain because if you don't have something to put that manifold on, which is why Hayward had they have like these little stands and you set it down. And then I found that making sure you line up with the pipe, make sure that's, and just put it on there, shake it. It just falls right into place.
Oh, people love that whenever when you do it, when they watch you do it, take the manifold and you shake it real good. And they're like, oh, wow. How did you do that?
I can't get it to do that. Or they'll try it and they'll come to our store. Hey, I got my grids out in there and can you put it back together for me? I tried doing that thing and I can't do it. So yeah, okay.
Another con is whenever you do have it open, and I'll throw that out there, the band on these filters. The first time I ever did a DE breakdown, I sat there and I just took the band, put the lid on, put the band back on, cranked it down, kept getting a little drip. And I sat at my first DE job probably for 4 hours trying to figure out how to stop a drip. In my head, it's not big enough for the customer to actually notice, but in my head, I'm leaving there and I'm like, oh man, this is going to drive me up the wall because I know that drip's there. So I actually talked to one of their reps on that. And if you take a rubber mallet and you kind of tap around the band and then tighten a little bit, tap around, tighten. And I know it's kind of time consuming, but you don't have to retake that band off, but put it back on, readjust and try. So that can be a kind of a nuisance. I've had a few phone calls from customers asking that.
Supposedly, and we're talking about like the band, the old Hayward band they're like flimsy. The new ones were supposed to be to where they alleviated that, which is unfortunately the problem with that is you can't put a new band on an old Pro Grid. You have to.
Yeah, the parts for it are expensive.
And the one thing I will
the
say,
microclear and the Pro Grid. Microclear, I think, wasn't the
So Pro Grid has two styles too.
well, oh yeah, I forgot about that. What I'm old enough to where I only remember the first version. Sorry.
Yeah, and if you had a microclear and you need to replace that band a few years ago, there's like no more bands. Sorry.
The new filter. Well, luckily we have one that fits exactly into that same thing.
but with both, and I think one of the major cons with both and not so much with the sand filter because it's one whole unit. With any of the cartridge or the DE where you have to separate the bottom from the top and a lot of people don't understand is over time with the elements expanding, contracting, they start to warp. And people will say, well, I cracked my lid. I bought a lid. Same one. It's like, yeah, same part, everything. But it's leaking. It's like, well, that's
fit on the base.
Because what happened was it warped. And even me, whenever you put the lid back on, if you don't, I used to take a grease pen and make a line from the top to the bottom. So when I put the lid back on, I lined it up so water went. If you don't, and it's off by a little bit, water's just going to be, and that's the worst thing when you're putting a DE back together or even a car. As soon as you tighten that band on there, turn it on, water coming out the side because you're like, oh, now I got to undo the band and then I got to reset it.
Another con is it's messy. And so whenever you do actually do the breakdowns and you do your backwashing, where are you backwashing it to? A lot of people just do it down to the gutter. I'm pretty sure not supposed to do that. Or they do it in a corner.
Some cities will tell you that you can't do that.
Or they'll put it in a corner of their backyard and the corner of their fence is just always white because they backwash in the same area all the time.
Yeah, and it will, certain grass, like here in Florida, people have like St. Augustine grass. And if you do backwash, you'll go out there and you'll see a big burn spot where you backwashed. And also when you're doing the annual for someone, where do you take all that clumped old DE? And people get mad. Well, you just left I was like, I don't know where you want me to.
I kept a bucket with me. Yeah, I just dumped it in my dumpster after.
That's what I usually tell people. Say, you got a bucket because I'm going to have to, once I take the grid, I'm going to shake it over the bucket and you're just going to get big clumps.
I had one guy make me literally clean each individual grid in a garbage can for him. And I was like, dude, I'm never doing your D breakdown again, number one. But
yeah. When it's like that, it's like, okay, this is a one time because,
I'm already here, dude. But
I'm here.
Never happening again.
Yeah. Someone else will have to do it. But yeah, that's the even recharging DE, the DE powder is so fine. Even when you get it in a bag, you're still wearing it all over you.
Well, it's vented bags. So you'll go to throw it on your shoulder in that vented corner, you're just like, oh man, I guess I got that on my hand.
Was like, shirt. Why am I getting is the bag ripped? No, it's that DE powder is just that fine.
Mm-hmm. It blows your mind.
Blows your minds.
All right, so we've covered all three types of filters. What about, so in general, if somebody's in the market to purchase a filter, what kind of things do you have to keep in mind when choosing the right filter for a pool?
Vegetation. I think vegetation should be strongly thought about. Like if you get a bunch of leaves in your pool, you get a bunch of pollen in your pool, stuff like that. Because you don't want to put something that's not going to filter that out properly.
Exactly. So, vegetation. Because if you get vegetation, your pool's more likely going to turn green versus other. And when you start down that road, which one will get your pool? Which one's going to make your pool blue quicker? Mm-hmm. And it's always going to be easy. You want to recommend a DE with.
Yeah, I think another thing to keep in mind is budget. Mm-hmm. So sand filters and cartridge filters are typically cheaper than a DE filter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So check your budget. What about usage? If you have a high bather load versus a pool is not really being used too much.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because if you got sunscreens and stuff like that going into the pool, I mean, do you really want to put a cartridge filter in there that's going to get clogged up every 6 months instead of a DE filter that you might have to backwash every few months to get that stuff out of there? So that's definitely a thought, you know.
Yeah, and one of the telltales on that is anytime you go out to your pool and you see that enzyme line, that black line along then you know that that you're having someone's either getting in there with that, which is why it's always a good idea to hose off before you get in your pool.
Yep. Yeah, and then definitely, you want to keep in mind the pool size and your pump when you're trying to match up a filter. You don't want to put a filter that can only handle 50 gallons per minute and put it on a pool with a 3 horsepower pump. So you want to make sure that's sized properly. The same goes for if you have a 10,000 gallon pool. You don't want to put a filter on there that's only designed for 5,000 gallons.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you go.
I think your footprint on your pad, where your equipment is, how much space you got, you definitely want to take that into consideration too.
Yeah, the main thing is the equipment. That's the big thing is what pump do you have on there now? Like say, size of the pool. So there's really is a lot. And when they come in, and that's when they come in, right, at least come to a store and they say, hey, I need a new filter. Then you start, even people call here, well, I need this. And then you start throwing these questions like, oh, I don't know. I say, yeah, there's a lot that goes into making sure you get the right thing.
Also, thinking about like if something breaks on it and you have to replace something. For instance, your DE and your sand filter, a lot of time on their multi-port valves, they have a recirculate section on there. So if lateral or grid is broken, you can turn it onto that recirc and still run your pool through that valve. It's not touching the filter, but it's just going through that valve. Where on a cartridge, if a lid breaks or something along those lines breaks and you can't run it, your pool's down until you get it A, fixed, or B, waiting on a part,
Yeah, at least you can with that you can recirculate your pool. As long as the pool water's moving, it's not filtering, but at least you can get the chemicals in there.
Yeah, you're mixing things up and you can keep your pool blue longer with the running pool. Then it may get cloudy on you because, like you said, you're not filtering anything out, but at least you're keeping things going.
And another thing when recommending it, also I tell people to look into is associated with the cost. It's like, I know they're expensive, but you also want to look at, will this filter be around? Because you're seeing a lot of people that are like, oh, they don't make my filter anymore. And it's like, well, next one you buy, you might want to buy one that you know that you can get the parts if something should happen readily available.
And let's talk about that a little bit. These metal filters, whenever people call us and they're like, hey, I got this filter and it's the metal version, those things are 30 years old, 40 years old. It's time to go. You're not finding parts for them, or we're having a hard time finding parts because there's very little parts.
Yeah,
it's time to buy a new filter.
And that's a shame because they were bought out. Obviously, when they were such a great thing, they were bought out by a bigger company that didn't like them because they were 30 years old, but they were bulletproof. They were indestructible. And that was the thing. And the only reason why people don't have them anymore is because the company that bought them out, like Pentair, just stopped making parts for them because they're like, look, you're going to buy these. Because even those
discontinued.
The best one was the DE that was on its side that had the round grids. And the best part about it was whenever you backwash, you just turned.
Yeah, the old spin filters.
Yeah, you spin the back, and then once you spin the grid, you don't have to worry about
everything off.
Yeah, you don't have to crack it open. And I was like, I had one. This was like it was like 40 years old. No problem. The handle broke, but then you could find a way to turn that.
I think another reason why they started going away from the metal filters is because of salt systems as well. Because you can't have a metal filter on a salt system.
Yep. Well, is there anything else to cover on filters?
Sounds
like a no.
No.
Radio silence. But if you have any questions or comments, please leave them on the video or give us a call at INYOPools.com or check out the website. If you have any questions.
How-to videos.
Right.
We have a how-to video on how to reassemble a D grid pack. And I think we even do the upside down trick. Good old
what about the right side up trick?
Yeah. Shadow.
Tip of the cap to hack.
2B cover. Or 2 cover.
We even have a video of a guy pulling his hair out that shows you that's what's going to happen if you don't do it right. You're going to pull your hair out.
Well, Matt, you want to sign us off?
I really prefer not to. But so long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye. Oh, actually,
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the INYOPools podcast. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. For more pool tips and resources, visit INYOPools.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Links for both are in the episode description. We'll see you next time.